There exists a moment in the depths of human consciousness when the fog of projection suddenly lifts, revealing landscapes that have been hidden beneath layers of hope, denial, and unconscious longing. For the empathic soul, this moment arrives like dawn after the longest night, quiet, inexorable, and utterly transformative. To witness the manipulative personality in their authentic form, stripped of the masks they wear and the stories they weave, is not merely an act of perception, but a profound initiation into the mysteries of the psyche itself. This revelation unfolds not as a lightning strike of sudden understanding, but as a gradual awakening, like the slow development of a photograph in the darkness of a developing room. The image emerges slowly, first the outlines, then the shadows, and finally the complete picture that has been there all along, waiting to be seen by eyes willing to abandon their cherished illusions. The empathic being moves through existence with a peculiar gift and burden, the capacity to feel into the hidden chambers of another's heart, to sense the unspoken pain that drives behavior, to touch the wounded child that lives beneath every adult facade. This sensitivity, while divine in its origins, becomes a double-edged sword when encountering the pathologically self-absorbed consciousness that sees others not as fellow souls, but as instruments for their own psychological survival. The inevitable collision. What draws these two archetypal forces together is not accident, but inevitability, a magnetic pull that operates beyond the realm of conscious choice. The empath, shaped by early experiences of emotional chaos or conditional love, carries within them an ancient hope that their capacity for understanding might finally heal what was broken long ago. The manipulative personality, trapped in the prison of their own narcissistic wound, seeks in the empath a perfect mirror that will reflect back the grandiose image they require to feel whole. This is not love in any authentic sense, but rather a collision of complementary wounds, a psychological dance choreographed by the unconscious mind's desperate attempt to resolve what remains unhealed within both participants. The empath projects onto the manipulator their own longing for wholeness, seeing potential where there is only performance, depth where there is only surface calculation, the illusion of a false savior. In the beginning stages of this encounter, the empath does not perceive the manipulator as they truly are. Instead, they behold a figure transformed by their own projected hopes, someone who appears to carry within them the very qualities the empath most desperately seeks: confidence where they feel uncertain, clarity where they experience confusion, strength where they recognize their own vulnerability. This initial phase resembles what happens in dreams when the psyche presents us with symbolic figures that seem to offer what we most need. The manipulator becomes a kind of false savior, a mirage in the desert of the empath's emotional landscape. They mistake the manipulator's charm for genuine warmth, their intensity for depth, their demands for passion. The psychological mechanism at work here involves what I have termed archetypal resonance, the way in which certain personalities activate specific patterns in the unconscious. The empath, often carrying the archetype of the wounded healer, encounters in the manipulator what appears to be their perfect counterpart, someone who seems to need exactly what they have to offer. But this appearance is deceptive. The manipulative consciousness does not seek healing in any genuine sense. They seek validation, control, and the constant feeding of their insatiable need for admiration. They have learned to recognize and exploit the empath's compassionate nature, using it as a source of the narcissistic supply they require to maintain their fragile sense of self. The unconscious collusion that develops between these two personality types creates what we might call a trauma bond, a connection forged not in love, but in the mutual activation of each other's deepest wounds. The empath's abandonment fears are triggered by the manipulator's intermittent reinforcement, while the manipulator's need for control is fed by the empath's tendency towards self-sacrifice. This dynamic can persist for months, years, even decades, with the empath caught in an endless cycle of hope and disappointment, giving and depleting, understanding and being misunderstood. They pour their energy into the bottomless well of the manipulator's needs, always believing that the next act of compassion, the next gesture of understanding, will finally bridge the gap between them. Unconscious warnings. In dreams during this period, the unconscious often presents symbolic warnings that the conscious mind is not yet ready to receive. The empath may dream of drowning in turbulent waters, of being chased through endless corridors, of feeding a creature that grows larger with each offering, but never shows gratitude or satisfaction. These dream images are not random, but represent the psyche's attempt to communicate what the waking mind refuses to acknowledge. The moment of true seeing, when it finally arrives, often feels like a kind of death. Not physical death, but the death of the illusion that has sustained the empath through countless disappointments. It may be triggered by a particularly cruel betrayal, a moment of such callous indifference that even the most compassionate heart cannot find an excuse for it, or it may come more gradually, through the accumulation of small cruelties that finally reach a critical mass. Whatever the catalyst, the moment of recognition brings with it a profound disorientation. The empath suddenly sees the person they have loved not as they wished them to be, but as they actually are. Someone fundamentally incapable of the reciprocal love the empath has been seeking. The realization strikes at the very core of their identity as someone who can heal through understanding, who can love others into wholeness. This moment is often accompanied by a devastating sense of grief, not only for the relationship that never truly existed, but for the years of their own life that have been spent in service to an illusion. The empath must mourn not only the loss of the person they thought they knew, but also the loss of their own naive belief in the transformative power of unconditional love. Yet within this grief lies the seed of profound transformation. For in seeing manipulator clearly, the empath is forced to examine their own role in the dynamic. They must confront the uncomfortable truth that their compassion was often driven by their own unhealed needs, the need to be needed, the need to prove their worth through service, the need to recreate and resolve childhood patterns of conditional love. The process of integration that follows this recognition is neither quick nor comfortable. The empath must descend into their own psychological underworld, encountering aspects of themselves they have long denied or avoided. They must face their own capacity for manipulation, their own hunger for control, their own shadow qualities that they have projected onto others or hidden beneath layers of compulsive kindness. This descent into the personal shadow is often reflected in dreams of wandering through dark forests, exploring abandoned buildings, or confronting frightening figures that turn out to be aspects of the self. And the unconscious presents these challenges not as punishment, but as opportunity, the chance to reclaim lost parts of the personality and integrate them into a more complete sense of self. The dark teacher and alchemical transformation. As this inner work progresses, the empath begins to understand that their encounter with the manipulator was not a mistake, but a necessary initiation. The manipulative personality served as a kind of dark teacher, forcing the empath to confront their own patterns of self-abandonment and to develop the very qualities they had been seeking in others: self-respect, healthy boundaries, and the ability to love without losing themselves in the process. The transformation that occurs during this phase is alchemical in nature. What began as the raw material of suffering and confusion is slowly transmuted into wisdom and compassion. Not the naive compassion that seeks to rescue and heal at all costs, but a mature compassion that includes discernment and self-preservation. This process of psychological integration often manifests in profound changes in the empath's dream life, where once they may have dreamed of being pursued or overwhelmed, they now begin to dream of standing firm, of building protective barriers, of discovering hidden rooms in their own house that they had never explored before. These dreams reflect the psyche's recognition that new possibilities are emerging. The empathic individual who has completed this journey of recognition and integration returns to the world fundamentally changed. They no longer seek to heal others as a way of avoiding their own wounds. They no longer mistake intensity for intimacy or drama for depth. They have developed what we might call conscious empathy, the ability to feel with others without losing themselves in the process. This transformation affects every aspect of their existence. Their relationships become more authentic because they are no longer driven by unconscious needs or compulsions. Their work becomes more effective because it flows from genuine strength rather than compensatory weakness. Their spiritual life deepens because it is no longer contaminated by the need to prove their worth through service. Perhaps most importantly, they develop a new relationship with their own sensitivity. What once felt like a vulnerability becomes a source of strength. What once made them susceptible to manipulation becomes a tool for discernment. They learn to trust their intuitive responses rather than explaining them away or overriding them with rational justifications. The manipulator's response and the empath's withdrawal. The manipulative personality, meanwhile, having lost the primary source of narcissistic supply, may attempt various strategies to re-engage the empath. They may promise change, express apparent remorse, or create crises designed to trigger the empath's compassionate response. But the awakened empath, having seen behind the mask, is no longer susceptible to these manipulations. This refusal to re-engage often triggers intense reactions from the manipulator, who may escalate their attempts at control through anger, guilt, or even threats. But these reactions serve only to confirm what the empath has come to understand: that the manipulator's primary concern has never been love or connection, but control and domination. The empath's withdrawal from this dynamic creates a void that the manipulator must somehow fill. Some may seek new sources of narcissistic supply, finding other empathic individuals to exploit. Others may be forced to confront their own emptiness, though this rarely leads to genuine self-reflection or change without professional intervention. For the empath, the period following this recognition often involves a process of profound solitude and self-discovery. Having spent so much energy focused on the needs and desires of others, they must now learn to attune to their own inner voice, their own needs, their own authentic desires. This process of reconnection with the self is often reflected in changes in creative expression, career choices, and lifestyle preferences. The empath may discover talents they had neglected, pursue interests they had abandoned, or make life changes they had previously considered impossible. They begin to inhabit their own life rather than living as a satellite in someone else's orbit. The capacity for genuine intimacy, rather than being destroyed by their encounter with manipulation, is actually enhanced through this process. Having learned to maintain their own center while remaining open to others, the awakened empath becomes capable of relationships characterized by mutual respect, authentic communication, and healthy interdependence rather than codependence. In the realm of symbolic understanding, this transformation can be seen as a modern enactment of ancient mythological themes. Like Persephone returning from the underworld, the empath emerges from their descent into unconscious patterns with new wisdom and authority. Like the hero who must face the dragon to climb the treasure, they have confronted their own shadow and emerged with gifts that can serve not only their own healing but the healing of others. The dreams that accompany this phase of integration often feature imagery of spring returning after winter, of flowers blooming in previously barren landscapes, of rivers that had been dammed finally flowing freely again. These symbols reflect the psyche's recognition that natural vitality and creativity are being restored after a period of artificial constraint. As the empath continues to integrate these new understandings, they often find themselves drawn to help others who are still trapped in similar dynamics. But their approach to helping is fundamentally different from the previous pattern. Rather than attempting to rescue or heal through self-sacrifice, they offer their assistance from a place of strength and boundaries. They become living examples of what is possible when someone refuses to accept less than they deserve in relationships. Their very presence challenges others to examine their own patterns of self-abandonment or manipulation. They serve as mirrors that reflect both the potential for healing and the cost of remaining unconscious. The work of integration continues throughout life as new situations arise that test the empath's commitment to their own well-being. Old patterns may resurface during times of stress or vulnerability, but the awakened empath now has the tools and awareness necessary to recognize these patterns and make conscious choices about how to respond. Dreams continue to serve as guides in this ongoing process, offering symbolic guidance for navigating new challenges and opportunities. The unconscious, having been trusted and honored through the process of shadow integration, becomes a reliable source of wisdom and creativity, rather than a repository of unprocessed trauma and projection. symbolic function of the manipulator. The relationship with the manipulative personality, while it may have ended in the external world, continues to serve a symbolic function in the empath's inner landscape. They may occasionally dream of this figure, but now the dreams serve different purposes, sometimes offering opportunities to practice new responses, sometimes revealing aspects of the dynamic that still require integration. In these later dreams, the manipulator may appear as a more obviously symbolic figure, a shapeshifter, a false prophet, or a hollow mannequin. These images reflect the psyche's evolved understanding of what the relationship actually represented, not a genuine encounter between two souls, but a projection of the empath's own unhealed material onto a convenient screen. The profound loneliness that many empaths experience during their awakening process gradually transforms into a different quality of solitude, not the emptiness of disconnection, but the fullness of self-possession. They learn to distinguish between being alone and being lonely, discovering that true companionship must begin with befriending themselves. This self-friendship becomes the foundation for all other relationships. Having learned to provide for themselves the understanding, compassion, and validation they once sought from others, they are no longer driven by desperation or need in their connections with others. They can offer their gifts freely because they are no longer giving from a place of depletion. The awakened empath often experiences a profound shift in their relationship with their own emotions. Where once they may have been overwhelmed by the intensity of their feelings, they now understand emotions as information and energy that can be channeled constructively. They learn to feel deeply without drowning, to care intensely without becoming consumed. This emotional mastery extends to their interaction with others' emotions as well. They can remain present with someone's pain without automatically taking it on. They can offer support without becoming enmeshed. They can maintain their own emotional equilibrium while still being genuinely helpful to others. The spiritual dimension of this transformation cannot be overlooked. Many empaths report experiencing a profound shift in their understanding of love, service, and spiritual purpose. They come to understand that their sensitivity is indeed a gift, but one that must be stewarded wisely rather than squandered on those who cannot appreciate or reciprocate it. Their spiritual practice, if they have one, often deepens and becomes more authentic. No longer driven by the need to prove their worth through the spiritual achievement or service, they can engage with their spirituality from a place of genuine seeking and devotion, and they may find themselves drawn to practices that emphasize discernment, protection, and self-care rather than self-sacrifice and endless giving. The process of forgiveness, when it comes, does not resemble the premature pardoning that characterized their earlier responses to harm. Instead, it emerges as a natural byproduct of understanding both of the manipulator's limitations and of their own unconscious participation in the dynamic. This forgiveness is not a gift to the manipulator, but a gift to themselves, a release from the bondage of resentment and blame. This mature forgiveness does not require reconciliation or even communication with the person who caused harm. It is an internal process of releasing the grip that past injuries hold on the present moment. It allows the empath to remember without reliving, to acknowledge what happened, without continuing to be victimized by it. As the integration process continues, the empath often finds that their entire approach to life becomes more strategic and intentional. Rather than moving through the world in a reactive state, constantly responding to others' needs and demands, they learn to make choices based on their own values, goals, and intuitive guidance. The shift from reactivity to intentionality affects every area of life, from career decisions to daily routines, from social interactions to creative pursuits. The empath begins to understand that their time and energy are finite resources that must be allocated wisely rather than given away indiscriminately. The dreams that accompany this phase often feature imagery of gardening, building, or crafting, activities that require patience, skill, and careful attention to detail. These symbols reflect the psyche's recognition that the empath is now engaged in the conscious creation of their own life, rather than simply responding to external demands. Relationships that develop during or after this transformation tend to be qualitatively different from those that preceded it. The awakened empath attracts and is attracted to individuals who are also committed to consciousness, growth, and authentic communication. Of these relationships are characterized by mutual respect, emotional honesty, and the ability to maintain individual identity within the context of connection. The fear of loneliness that once drove the empath to accept unsuitable relationships gradually dissolves as they discover the richness available in conscious solitude. They learn that being alone does not mean being abandoned, and that the quality of their relationships matters far more than the quantity. This comfort with solitude allows for the development of a rich inner life. The empath may discover new creative talents, develop philosophical or spiritual interests, or pursue learning for the sake of personal fulfillment, rather than external validation. They began to understand that their relationship with themselves is the foundation upon which all other relationships are built. The transformation also affects their relationship with their past. Rather than being haunted by memories of manipulation and betrayal, they come to see their experiences as valuable learning opportunities that contributed to their growth and wisdom. They can look back with compassion for their former naive self, while also appreciating the strength and resilience that carried them through difficult times. This reframing of past experiences often brings a sense of completion and meaning to what once felt like senseless suffering. The empath begins to understand that their journey through manipulation and awakening has equipped them with unique insights and capabilities that can serve both their own continued growth and their ability to help others. The gifts that emerge from this process are numerous and profound. The awakened empath develops extraordinary discernment, able to sense authenticity and deception with remarkable accuracy. They become skilled at setting and maintaining boundaries without guilt or apology. They learn to love deeply while preserving their own integrity and autonomy. Perhaps most importantly, they develop an unshakable sense of their own worth that is not dependent on external validation or approval. This inner security allows them to navigate relationships and life challenges from a place of strength rather than need, abundance rather than scarcity, collective shift and catalysts for awakening. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond the individual empath. Their awakening contributes to a collective shift in consciousness, challenging cultural norms that enable manipulation and exploitation. By refusing to accept treatment that diminishes their worth, they model for others what healthy self-respect looks like. Their presence in the world becomes a catalyst for others' awakening, not through preaching or teaching, but simply by embodying the possibility of living authentically while remaining open-hearted. They demonstrate that it is possible to be sensitive without being vulnerable to exploitation, compassionate without being self-sacrificing. The journey from unconscious empathy to conscious empathy represents one of the most significant psychological transformations a human being can undergo. It requires courage to face difficult truths, patience to allow natural healing processes to unfold, and wisdom to distinguish between what can be changed and what must be accepted. For those who find themselves at the beginning of this journey, it is important to remember that transformation takes time and that setbacks are a normal part of the process. The unconscious patterns that led to involvement with manipulative personalities were often established in childhood and will not disappear overnight. Support from others who have walked this path can be invaluable, whether through therapy, support groups, or friendships with other awakened empaths. The journey becomes less isolating when shared with understanding companions. The validation of one's experiences and perceptions can be crucial for those emerging from relationships characterized by gaslighting and reality distortion. Conscious choice and continued growth. The ultimate goal is not to become invulnerable or closed-hearted, but to develop the capacity for conscious choice in relationships. The awakened empath learns to open and close their heart strategically, offering their gifts to those who can appreciate and reciprocate them while protecting themselves from those who would exploit their generosity. This transformation is not a destination, but an ongoing process of growth and refinement. Each new relationship, each new challenge offers opportunities to practice the skills and awareness that have been developed. The journey continues. But with each step, the empath becomes more skilled at navigating the complex landscape of human relationships while maintaining their own integrity and well-being. Victory and the return of the gifts. In the end, the encounter with the manipulative personality, while painful, serves as an initiation into a deeper understanding of love, relationships, and the nature of consciousness itself. The empath who completes this journey emerges not as a victim, but as a victor, someone who has faced the shadow and emerged with gifts that serve not only their own healing, but the healing of the world. The final phase of this transformation involves what we might call the return of the gifts. Having been wounded and healed, having descended into darkness and emerged into light, the awakened empath is called to use their hard-won wisdom in service to others. But this service is fundamentally different from their previous pattern of self-sacrificial giving. They serve now from fullness rather than emptiness, from choice rather than compulsion, from wisdom rather than naive compassion. They become beacons for others who are still trapped in unconscious patterns, living examples of what becomes possible when someone chooses their own healing over the comfortable familiarity of dysfunction. evolving consciousness and inspiring others. Their very existence challenges the collective patterns that enable manipulation and exploitation. By refusing to participate in these dynamics, they help to evolve the consciousness of humanity itself. They become part of the solution to the epidemic of narcissism and codependence that plagues modern relationships. And in this service, they find the true meaning of their sensitivity and compassion, not as tools for rescuing others from the consequences of their choices, but as instruments for revealing truth, modeling health, and inspiring others to undertake their own journey of awakening and integration. The circle is complete, but the spiral continues, for consciousness is infinite in its capacity for growth and refinement, and each new level of awareness opens onto new mysteries, new challenges, and new opportunities for service and love. The awakened empath walks this path with gratitude for the journey that brought them to this place of clarity, and with anticipation for whatever revelations await around the next bend in the road.